Kyrgyzstan goes to the polls today to elect a new president. We're joined over Skype by Bektour Iskender, co-founder of Kyrgyzstan's Kloop.kg independent news agency. Thank you for joining us today, Bektour. My first question for you, let's talk a bit about the two leading candidates.
Talking now about these candidates, it's really difficult right now to say who are they based on, because I think the finally it has been shaped only like during last week, when it became clear that authorities are gonna pressure Babanov as much as possible, and that Jeenbekov seems like is using a lot of support from authorities, to promote him to win in this election. Before that, it was not really clear what is their agenda, because even as recently as in August, President Atambayev was telling that if Jeenbekov does not become a president, he would love to see Babanov as president. So basically, relationship between them seemed to be quite nice. And we thought, wow, what kind of weird situation when like two leading candidates are both supported by the president. So that's why I think most people in the country, they didn't really differentiate between them, because I think in the eyes of many people, both of these leading candidates are people who have been prime ministers already. They have already been involved in politics. Babanov is related to some business which some people think is quite shady, especially what he was doing in 90s, And Jeenbekov is just, a governor who turned like prime minister, and a person who is just heavily promoted by authorities, but who himself as a personality is not that much popular. So that's why until maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, it was really unclear for many people, I think, who to vote for. And only during last 2 weeks, authorities, they kind of gave this gift to people, because they really started putting a lot of pressure on Babanov. And then I think how agenda has now been formed is that those people who don't like authorities, basically, they vote for Babanov, I think. And those who do, they vote for Jeenbekov. And then there are quite a lot of people who just ignore, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Kyrgyzstan, traditionally at least, is reputed to have very large regional differences. Do these candidates have different regional bases?
I do think they do, but I'm not sure if it's that important this year, because Jeenbekov, he is from the south, and he's extremely popular in the south. And what is especially worrying right now is maybe I'm jumping a little bit toward like the next question, but I just got this report that our reporter, and this is a city where Jeenbekov was a governor like of local region, and seems like especially in the south of the country, he has some support from local police authorities. And what our reporters tell is that near each polling station, near each voting station, there are, as they call them, sportsmen, people who are related, to the sports clubs. And these people are also quite often in Kyrgyzstan related to criminal groups, who are looking at whoever they think is suspicious. And especially they target journalists, and especially journalists of Kloop and Azatec have been targeted. And in one case, our reporter was attacked by this sportsman today, and she was forced to erase everything that she had recorded before that. And what she claims she was trying to film is how what we call in Kyrgyzstan administrative resource was used. How we have this, I don't even know how to call it in English. Like we have this position domkom, which is a typically Soviet kind of thing. There's people who are kind of main people at the neighborhood, or main people at the house, at the multi-apartment house, right? Like super local kind of government. I don't even know how to call this. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Domcom thing. I don't know how to. So these domcoms, they are usually the ones who are responsible for kind of promoting people to go to voting stations and to vote for Jeenbekov, and they invent a lot of tricky ways how to kind of convince people that it is possible to find out that who they voted for. Although I'm not sure if it's possible actually. So some really strange things are going on today, especially in the south of the country. And I guess that there is some connection between the fact that Jeenbekov is from the south, that he has been a local governor. So I think that he has really strong connections with with the police in the south and with whoever else. And this probably helps him a lot, especially in the south, to bring people to voting stations, to kind of to be forced to vote for him. The same has been happening with students since morning, because it's really strange. Like in the morning, those voting stations, which are located in the same area where university dormitories are located, they were crowded with students. There were like hundreds of students who were queued up early in the morning on Sunday, which is unbelievable. I mean, how would student, be voluntarily willing, to wake up Sunday morning and to go and vote? Seems like also there was some pressure from university professors or whoever, and I mean the state university, of course, state universities. So in Osh it was the same thing, like, but it was also in Bishkek. We recorded these facts in Bishkek as well. This mass voting of students.
Well, so Kyrgyzstan is known as one of the most democratic countries in Central Asia, really the most democratic country in Central Asia. When all is said and done, how free and fair do you think these elections will be?
I mean, comparing to other Central Asian countries, yes, they might be like the ones. But I've been writing about this recently. To be honest, I'm a bit tired of being compared to other Central Asian countries. And what I feel is that, foreign press is exaggerating and kind of glorifying a little bit, the democracy in Kyrgyzstan, because I've seen, this reports in Time magazine, especially Time magazine. I mean, they wrote, this whole piece about Almazbek Atambayev, calling him like a true Democrat or something, which I don't think he is, And then the Guardian was praising what's going on in Kyrgyzstan, also calling this like freest and fairest elections in Central Asia. And yeah, I mean, if you take Central Asia, then they are maybe. This might be the first elections, the first presidential elections where the second round of voting would have to be needed, But then I'm so tired of being compared to other Central Asian countries, because I think we can become much worse, and we'll still be better than all of our neighbors. You know what I mean? So I see a lot of violations going on. I don't think that we have a true democracy in our country. And there was a lot of pressure on the independent media this year, and a lot has been done by authorities to promote, the pro-authority kind of, their own candidate at the elections. The public television is being used by authorities to promote their agenda as well. So, I mean, there are so many problems in Kyrgyzstan. But then, when foreign media come here, they kind of expect something even worse, I guess. I mean, I probably think they expect some dictatorship with, like statues of Atambayev or something, and then they don't see it here, which is true. And then they think that, we are cool, but we are not, unfortunately.
So since we've discussed electoral violations, I wanted to take a step back and look at the actual campaign. This has been a very dramatic electoral campaign, and not just because it's competitive, but also because there have been some rather unusual drama. For example, Kyrgyzstan appears to be in kind of a confrontation with its neighbor Kazakhstan as a result of this election. Additionally, there are some indications that perhaps the Jeenbekov campaign has played on ethnic tensions in southern Kyrgyzstan as a means of discrediting Omurbek Babanov. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Oh yes, this has been used a lot, and it's really a pity that so much of what has been used against Babanov was based on ethnicity. Because one thing was that at some point, there was an army of trolls, of online trolls, who started, pointing to the fact that his mother is an ethnic Turk, as far as I know, and because it was highlighted so much. So often, and then he made this speech in Osh, where some of his phrases were taken out of context, I guess, and then it was impossible to stop it, because this is such a sensitive issue, relationship between ethnic Kyrgyz and ethnic Uzbek people in the south of Kyrgyzstan. So it went as far as General Prosecutor's Office claiming that Babanov's speech has been inciting inter-ethnic violence or something like this. I mean, that's what they kind of said based on the expertise that they organized. And that was one story. but then another huge scandal, which was mostly happening during last 7 days, was about Kazakhstan. And again, I don't still understand how it started, because I think Atambayev was personally offended so much by the fact that Nazarbayev started basically supporting Babanov. I think Atambayev was expecting him, to either not support anyone or support, Jeenbekov maybe. But the thing is that because that's another interesting thing in Kyrgyzstan is that in Kyrgyzstan, I'm very sorry. In Kyrgyzstan, Nazarbayev is extremely popular actually. And among some people, because one of the very popular opinions in Kyrgyzstan is that we have our problems because we had too much freedom, because we had too much democracy, and because we've never had a leader with such a strong hand as Nazarbayev has. This is an opinion which is quite popular in Kyrgyzstan, and especially because Kazakhstan is the nearest country. It's the country which is easiest to travel to, and also it's a country which actually has a much higher level of life. And people travel to Almaty quite often, for example, and they see Almaty and they think, wow, this is such a cool, beautiful city. And then their opinion about how our country needs like a leader with a strong, firm hand, whatever, becomes even stronger. So that's why Nazarbayev being quite a popular figure in Kyrgyzstan, paradoxically. When Nazarbayev supports someone, this actually might influence the outcome of elections quite. That's why when he met Babanov, this was first of all, the fact of the meeting itself was discussed a lot, by people, and then of course reaction of Atambayev was completely out of control. I mean, I think he was just honestly telling what he thinks about this. I don't think that any speechwriter would ever write a speech like the one that Atambayev gave on this, now famous meeting with teachers. Actually, it was, where Atambayev started suddenly not talking about education, but attacking Nazarbayev and kind of insulting him actually, because he started telling that why does Nazarbayev think that we need a young president when he himself is older than whoever of the candidates that we have, which is kind of true. But it's funny when Atambayev starts then telling about how in Kazakhstan authorities are trying to control everything, and how and then he kind of tries to show Kyrgyzstan as like the fairest and the purest country in the world. And this is so funny because we have so many similar problems with Kazakhstan. So that's why Atambayev's speech was met. It was actually much more popular in Kazakhstan than it was in Kyrgyzstan.
So there are two candidates. Each could win. We're not sure who will win. What would a victory of either Jeenbekov or Babanov mean for Kyrgyzstan, and what issues will they have to deal with? Whichever one wins, what issue will the winner have to deal with in office?
I think that, if Jeenbekov wins, it's quite obvious. It's just going to be, basically like a transfer of power within like the party dynasty kind of. But I'm curious, because I think that if Jeenbekov wins, then it's going to be interesting, because actually we had the change of constitution last year, and one of the things that was changed was that after Atambayev's term is over, the next president has a little bit lower kind of influence in the whole political hierarchy. So basically, Prime Minister becomes a much more influential person since the 1st of December of 2017, right? When Atambayev's official term is over. Because not every constitution change was immediately kind of put into force after the referendum of last year. So basically, if Jeenbekov becomes a president, he will not be as influential as the president is right now. So it will be very interesting who's going to be a prime minister. We've been always suspicious that it's going to be Atambayev, and so many people in Kyrgyzstan have the same fear, I would say, or I don't know, the same belief that Atambayev might become a prime minister from December. So that's why, since the beginning of the year, at every press conference where Kloop reporters were invited, we were asking him the same question. And he is fed up with this question now, because we always ask him this. We just ask him a very simple, straightforward, closed question: if he's going to become, if he's going to stay in power or not, if he's going to be a prime minister or not, and that's it. We just want him to say yes or no, Just to have this on the record, this series of confirmations by Atambayev that he's not going to be anyone. Today we asked him again. He said that he kind of answered comrades from Kloop about this many times before, that he's not going to become a president or prime minister. So he again voiced this today, and we hope that he's not lying, and that he's not going to change his mind as he did sometimes in his past. So then, if Atambayev does not become a president, then it's super interesting. Like if Atambayev does not become a prime minister, then it's super interesting. Like who's going to become a prime minister, and how Jeenbekov will have to deal with this person. Because if it's going to be like an inter-social democrats kind of clash, maybe it's going to be like a clash between him and Sapar Isakov, who is a current prime minister. I don't know. It's going to be interesting anyway. Now, if Babanov becomes president, that's even more interesting, because then we'll have a president who is from, this Respublika party, and then we'll have a parliament where Respublika is the second biggest, the second biggest party in the parliament, and the biggest one is Social Democrats, which are, a party that is founded by Atambayev. So then it's going to be a very interesting balance of power. Then we might have a president from one party and prime minister from another party. And it's going to be, it's going to be quite cool, I guess. But I think any outcome is pretty cool. But as I wrote today in the morning on my Facebook page, I think the biggest win for Kyrgyzstan would be if we have, just the fact of the second round, because this is a really good sign. I mean, if it happens such a way that no one today gets 50% of votes, then it is a sign of something really good. It would be a sign of us learning how to actually, hold pretty much fair elections, despite whatever issues were today. And then, if there is a second round of voting, I don't think that it's so significantly important who of those candidates is going to win. Just the fact, of the fight itself is pretty cool. And I don't think that there's going to be much difference between the way they would rule. I just think that, it will be different types of clashes that we'll have to face immediately after they come to power. Clashes probably with the prime minister over like who is more important and who is more significant now.
Looking beyond these sort of internal conflicts between different politicians, between the president and the prime minister, whoever becomes the new president, what issues in Kyrgyzstan will he have to deal with? What political issues, what economic ones, what social issues? What's at the top of the agenda, in your opinion?
I think the first thing will be like whether are we staying in this Eurasian Union or not, because I think this was one of the biggest one of the biggest campaigns of Atambayev actually during his presidency. This whole huge step basically of joining Eurasian Union. And then there were so many promises that people in Kyrgyzstan would benefit from it so much by being able to have to build their business and to sell something in Kazakhstan or Russia and whatever. So there were a lot of promises. Although joining Eurasian Union basically destroyed a significant part of our economy, re-export of Chinese goods, something that Kyrgyzstan has been famous for. And what is happening right now, I guess, is that people don't feel like Eurasian Union actually brought us that much. And to make it even worse, things like, Kazakhstan shutting down the border or making it difficult to cross the border, which has been happening during the last 4 days, whole agricultural sector of Kyrgyzstan is now, in huge trouble because of this. And I I don't think that people in Kyrgyzstan just feel that Eurasian Union works at all. So I think that one of the first things that the new president will have to deal with is to either convince people that there is still a good perspective in being part of this union, or trying to deal with Russia or Kazakhstan or whoever about what should be the actual benefits of us being part of the union, because it's both a very important foreign policy issue, but it also heavily influences like what's going on within the country, because our economy seems like it so much depends on this. So this is I think this is going to be like the headache number one for whoever becomes president.
I'd like to ask you one final question, which I really can't avoid here. There's a topic, it's often brought up in discussions of Kyrgyzstan. It's extremely polarizing, both in the country as well as among people who study Kyrgyzstan's politics and its society in general. That's the question of growing religious extremism. This is a topic that Almazbek Atambayev, the current president, has raised fairly frequently. He's actually harped on the growth of Islam in Kyrgyzstan rather heavily. Did that issue play any role in the campaign, in the presidential campaign this year? And have either of the candidates taken a position on it?
I think it played some role, because actually, and that's really interesting. So the brother of Jeenbekov, Asylbek Jeenbekov, he was at least unofficially, I guess. I don't think that officially there is a confirmation of this, but he seems like he's having strong ties with royal families or whoever, like some businesses in Saudi Arabia and some other, mostly in Saudi Arabia, I think, maybe in Kuwait, but I'm not sure about this. But anyway, so even if it's not true, just the rumor about this made people believe, those people who are religious, and especially those people who are followers of this new waves of Islam that have been coming to Kyrgyzstan since 90s. So for these people, this was such an important factor, I guess. I heard so many stories of, when people were telling me how someone would say he or she would vote for Jeenbekov because they heard that he prays 5 times a day or something like this, So Jeenbekov has this image, at least, of a person who is kind of religious, or at least, connected with people who are related to Saudi Arabia. Jeenbekov himself hates, such a connection being mentioned. So when 24.kg, one of the websites in Kyrgyzstan, they wrote something, they mentioned something about this, he immediately filed a lawsuit against them, and he won, at least at the first, like at the district court, he won. So he doesn't like these things being mentioned at all, but, they are mentioned very much in the country, and I guess this kind of helped Jeenbekov to gain some popularity among the religious electorate. But at the same time, and because Kyrgyzstan is so unusual and interesting, you cannot just rely on religious electorate to win in the election, because on one hand there is growth of popularity of which I would say very conservative branches of Islam. Yes, that's true, but then at the same time, I guess there is also growing fear of conservative branches of Islam in Kyrgyzstan as well, among other Muslims who are not as conservative, or among people who are not religious, or among, I don't know, whoever else, So that's why for these people, the fact that Jeenbekov is rumored to be linked to religious organizations was actually a reason not to vote for him. So that's why he had to balance between, these two opinions. So that's why I think he was filing a lawsuit against media, because he doesn't want, on one hand, to be connected to such organizations or to royal families or whoever, but on the other hand, probably he understands that for some people it makes him actually a candidate number one,
Very interesting. Well, I'd like to ask you one final question. Do you think Kyrgyzstan will see a second round of the election or not?
I hope that Kyrgyzstan will see it, but it's so unpredictable right now. Absolutely. It's so difficult to say what's going to happen tonight. The good thing is that the first preliminary results are going to be known, I think, within 12 hours or so. The picture will be more or less. It's one of the few good things which is happening at this election, is that, this electronic, how these things are called, where you put the ballot. I don't remember how it's called. Like a ballot box? Ballot box? No? Is it called ballot box, this thing?
Well, that's where you put a paper ballot. There are also voting machines.
Yeah, ballot. So basically what we use, this standard form of this ballot box in Kyrgyzstan is the one which scans, ballots while they are being put inside, so that they basically scan who the person voted for, without, of course, understanding who this person was. But this helps to have preliminary results within like hours after the election is over. And we tried the system for the first time in 2015 parliament elections, and then it was a requirement for all the elections to use such kind of system. The scanning ballot boxes, sophisticated things, which are now being used everywhere in Kyrgyzstan. So that's why within 12 hours, I guess, we're gonna know something. We're gonna find out something very interesting. I'm very curious about what's gonna be. I'm gonna sleep for the whole night tonight, because I will also be responsible at Kloop for the night coverage of what's gonna be. Yeah, so we'll see. But it's so difficult right now for me even to guess how it's gonna turn out.